Deion Sanders faces his biggest quarterback crisis yet. Why the Buffs' issues go beyond Kaidon Salter. By Your Name, college football feature writer. The 2025 college football season was supposed to be the year that Colorado took the next step under head coach Deion Coach Prime Sanders. After turning Boulder into one of the most talked about campuses in America, Sanders reloaded his roster, brought in transfers, and put the Buffs in a position to compete in their first season as full members of the Big 12. But 5 weeks into the season, reality has hit hard. The Buffaloes sit 0-2 in the Big 12 and 2-3 overall after a heartbreaking 24-27 loss to BYU. Instead of climbing the rankings, they are sitting at the bottom of the conference standings. And instead of celebrating progress, the national media and Buff Nation are pointing fingers. The biggest target? Quarterback Kaidon Salter. The rise and fall of Kaidon Salter. When Salter transferred from Liberty, Colorado fans were buzzing. He was supposed to be the answer, an electric dual-threat quarterback who could bring a new dimension to the Buffs' offense. For a quarter, that hype looked justified. Against BYU, Salter came out firing. He ran for a 3-yard score, then dropped a 19-yard touchdown dime to freshman phenom Draylon Miller, putting the Buffs up 14-0 before most fans had finished their first round of stadium nachos. Colorado looked dangerous. Colorado looked alive. Colorado looked like the team Coach Prime promised they would be. And then it all fell apart. When the wheels came off, after the first quarter, the Buffs' offense went ice cold. Drives stalled. Protection broke down. The play calling looked conservative and predictable. BYU slowly chipped away at the lead, turning a 14-point deficit into a one-possession game. Colorado still had a chance late in the fourth quarter, until Salter threw a devastating interception to Isaiah Glasker. Final score: BYU 27, Colorado 24. Salter's final stat line wasn't terrible: 11 of 16 passing for 119 yards, 1 TD, 1 INT, plus 49 rushing yards and a touchdown on 17 carries, but it wasn't good enough to win. And in college football, especially under the Coach Prime microscope, not good enough is enough to get the Wolves howling. The QB controversy heats up. By the time the post-game show rolled around, Buff Nation was already debating whether Salter should stay QB1. Insiders Adam Munstertager, Will Gardner, and Sean Niehoff broke it all down on the Buff Stampede podcast. Munstertager didn't mince words. There's a lot of people that are now saying, okay, I've seen enough. Salter can't win a game. He's a head case. He's not the guy to close it out. So, let's put him on the bench. It's a wasted experiment. Let's just play Juju Lewis the rest of the year or he's gonna walk. Freshman quarterback Julian Juju Lewis has become the new fan favorite, with many clamoring to see him take over. But Gardner urged patience, arguing that benching Salter now would be a mistake. Not yet. You got to give Kaidon Salter the opportunity the next 2 weeks and then reassess it after that point. If it's more of what we saw last night versus what we saw previously, then yeah, you start to build for the future. Gardner made another key point that cuts to the heart of Colorado's problem. They don't give him a whole bunch of things. They give him a system he can play in. You throw Juju Lewis into the system, he's not going to look any better than Salter. In other words, the QB is not the only problem. The real issue, QB development. That's where Sean Niehoff jumped in, taking aim not at the players, but at the coaches, specifically offensive coordinator Pat Shurmur. For a young QB that still needs to develop, you're looking for a program to provide growth, not just throw them into games to the Wolves, Niehoff said. Pat Shurmur is not a quarterback coach. He never has been. He's been an offensive coordinator, but always an O-line guy. He was a run game coordinator before he was an OC and then a head coach. He's not a QB developer. Niehoff's comments struck a chord with many fans who have been frustrated with the Buffs' offensive identity. Shurmur may have decades of NFL experience, but his background has always leaned toward the run game and offensive line play. For a program that is trying to build around young quarterbacks, Salter, Lewis, and even Ryan Staub, the lack of true quarterback development could be a long-term problem. Kaidon Salter opens up. It messed up my head. If there were any doubts about the mental toll this QB carousel is taking, Salter erased them in his post-game comments. He admitted that being benched earlier this season after the Delaware game and watching Ryan Staub start against Houston shook his confidence. That decision messed up my head a little bit, Salter said. It showed. Salter looked rattled at times against BYU, hesitant to pull the trigger on downfield throws and relying more on his legs than his arm. That's a stark contrast to his breakout performance against Wyoming, when he torched the Cowboys for 304 passing yards, 3 TDs, plus 86 rushing yards. The talent is there, but the consistency, that's still a work in progress. What this means for Deion Sanders. This is where Coach Prime comes in. Sanders has built his brand on motivation, swagger, and culture building, and it worked wonders in year one. But now he faces a different challenge: player development and system building. The Buffs don't just need a QB1. They need a plan for how to develop that QB1 and QB2 and QB3 into long-term assets. That means evaluating whether Shermer is the right OC for this stage of Colorado's rebuild. It means deciding whether to stick with Salter for the next few games or turn to the freshman Phenom Lewis. And it means figuring out how to get the most out of an offense that has been inconsistent since week 1. What's next? 2 games that could define the season. Colorado's next 2 games are make or break. Gardner's advice: give Salter 2 more weeks before reassessing. Maybe exactly what Sanders does. If Salter shows the same flashes he did against Wyoming, he could quiet the critics and keep the starting job. But if the offense sputters again, the Juju Lewis era might begin sooner than anyone expected. The bottom line: this is about more than just one interception against BYU. It's about whether Colorado can take the next step as a program. It's about whether Deion Sanders can prove he's not just a culture changer, but a system builder. And most of all, it's about giving whichever quarterback takes the field the tools to succeed, mentally, physically, and schematically. Because if the Buffs don't figure it out soon, they risk losing not just games, but the future stars who were supposed to lead them into a new era. The bigger picture: Deion's real test. While the conversation publicly revolves around Salter versus Lewis, insiders insist that Deion Sanders' biggest challenge isn't just choosing a QB. It's building a system that develops quarterbacks, something the Buffaloes currently lack. Until that deeper issue is fixed, swapping QBs may be little more than cosmetic change. For Coach Prime, Week 6 and beyond will define not just this season, but also the credibility of his long-term vision at Colorado. Will he stick with Salter? Will he unleash Juju Lewis? Or will he make the more difficult move, reshaping the coaching structure to finally give his quarterbacks a real chance to grow? The clock is ticking in Boulder, and the pressure has never been greater.